Hey guys, Sko here. In this video, I'm going to answer which tank is best for progress rating in patch 7.1.5. Keep in mind that this is an opinion piece, so it's okay to agree or disagree with what I'm saying. Let me start by saying that up until this point in Legion, I would say that tank balance for progress rating has been very poor by Blizzard. There's been big gaps between certain tanks, and strength has varied largely. If we look back to Emerald Nightmare, Warriors and Druids came out on top by a large margin. Warriors since then have received a substantial Ignore Pain nerf before TOV, which then just left Druids as the undisputed top spot. While there were other tanks quite close behind, such as Paladin, other classes such as Demon Hunter and Monk, or even worse Death Knight, have remained far behind throughout the expansion. Now with Blizzard releasing 7.1.5, they are attempting to close the gap between the tanks, bringing every tank closer to a level playing field. In terms of adjusting the tanks, if we look at it on a high level from the patch notes, we can see that what's been buffed is Death Knight, Monk, and Demon Hunter. What's stayed largely the same on neutral, with only maybe gameplay changes, is Paladin and Warrior. And what's been nerfed is Druid. So how have these buffs or nerfs made a significant difference to the tank ranking for progress rating? I've split the tanks into 4 tiers, and here are my thoughts. At the bottom, tier 4, we have Death Knights. Death Knights have received a lot of buffs across several abilities. The key ones to note are Bone Shield charges are now only consumed by melee attacks and spectral deflection. Due to a higher uptime on Bone Shield stacks, it means you're not going to be required to use Marrow Rend as much. This leaves more runes to be used on Heartstrike. Using Heartstrike more means that you'll be generating more runic power than before. In turn, this means more Death Strikes and also further reduced cooldown time on Vampiric Blood due to the Red Thirst talent. Secondly, rune tap damage reduction has been increased to 40%, up from 25%. This gives Death Knights an option of a short, strong cooldown to deal with certain boss mechanics, for example Odin's Spear or Hellier Breath. Potentially more viable to use this now as Marrow Rend is less required to keep Bone Shield up, but you still need to replace Foul Bulwark for it, which keeps it quite niche. Rune Tap remains a talent you would only take for certain fights. Thirdly, Vampiric Blood now increases incoming absorbs as well as heals. Vampiric Blood is the strongest cooldown in the Death Knight arsenal, and with this change it becomes even stronger. The inclusion of absorbs will also make your blood shield stronger. Death Knights are what Blizzard refer to as the cooldown tank. And yes, they have a lot of cooldowns at their disposal. Vampiric Blood will have a high uptime alongside AMS and longer cooldowns such as Rune Weapon or Icy Veins. The talent tree also gives you access to several more cooldowns such as Blood Mirror, Ruin Tap, and even Tombstone, even though that would be a little bit counterproductive to Vampiric Blood due to replacing the Red Thirst talent. So yes, Death Knights have a lot of cooldowns, and if planned correctly, you could probably have a very high uptime on them while actually tanking the boss. However, the core problem that has held Death Knight back for so long in Legion remains at large. Their ability to smooth incoming damage is just not the best. Death Knights take 16% reduced damage via Bone Shield being up. In comparison, one stack of Iron Fur on a Druid, combined with a generally higher HP and armor, is significantly more physical damage reduction. Instead, Death Knights rely on the reactive healing of Death Strike in an attempt to make up for it. This is not an ideal situation for progress rating. Overall, Death Knight is stronger than before. You can expect more runic power, which means more Death Strikes, and subsequently higher uptime on an even stronger Vampiric Blood. This is even more so the case in Nighthold with the set bonuses. However, I will never understand why Blizzard nerfed Bone Shield to 16% from 20% in the Legion beta. I feel as if a change, like bringing it back to 20%, is something that Death Knights drastically need to bring them closer to a level playing field. So Death Knight is going to be the only tank in tier 4, which moves me on to the next tier, guys, and this was a tough one, tier 3. And first up we have Demon Hunters. Demon Hunters have actually received a lot of changes and a lot of buffs in the patch. Metamorphosis is now much stronger. Armor gets increased by 100%, and you're going to be generating a lot of soul fragments while in Metamorphosis. Demonic Spikes and Demonic Wards have had changes. Demonic Spikes loses 10% physical damage reduction, but now through Demonic Wards, Demon Hunters gain an additional 10% flat damage reduction across the board, as well as a significant stamina increase. Soul Barrier will hopefully now be a potentially viable option after a significant base absorb increases and pain cost reduction. And the damage done by most Vengeance spells has also been increased by 9%, which is a very welcome addition, keeping in mind that on progress you need extremely high raid DPS, which includes tanks. So Demon Hunters have a passive 10% damage reduction, which you could compare to Death Knight's 16% damage reduction via bonus shield. However, Demon Hunters can also put up Demon Spikes to reduce physical damage by a decent percentage with high mastery. Worth noting as well that with the 4-part Nighthold bonus, Demon Spike should almost be up 100% of the time. They also have the option to empower wards on a 20-second cooldown to reduce magical damage by 30%. From there, a Demon Hunter is then relying on the reactive healing of Soul Cleave. So Demon Hunters have a good amount of cooldowns, for example via Soul Barrier for the shield absorb, Foul Devastation for the burst healing, and Fiery Brand to reduce all damage. The new meta is also so strong that it means that the artifact trait Fueled by Pain, which can put you in meta for 5 seconds when you consume a soul fragment, will be a very nice proc when tanking. Overall, I think Demon Hunter is going to be a much better at damage smoothing than that of the Death Knight. Combined with cooldown usage, I think Demon Hunter should be a fairly strong tank. That being said, its damage smoothing is not necessarily as high as the other options on the table. The next tank that's going to join Demon Hunter in tier 3 is the Warrior. Warrior has received quite significant gameplay changes with the patch. The changes are primarily aimed at increasing the AoE DPS, which has in the past been quite lackluster in comparison to other tank options. I am personally not a fan of the gameplay changes for raids, however, and I made a video about this several weeks ago when trying out the changes on the PTR. I will post a link to the video in the description. Anyway, the short summary is as follows. Focus Rage and Ultimatum have been removed. Revenge has replaced the role of Focus Rage when Vengeance weaving to give you the Ignore Pain discounts. And this is a big gameplay change, as Focus Rage was not on global cooldown, whereas Revenge is. Previously we could cycle between Focus Rage and Ignore Pain freely outside of standard rotation. Now we need to actually monitor the GCD to use Revenge in conjunction with Vengeance. This translates to a much slower and clunkier feel of play. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this. Secondly, the AoE DPS is going to increase in Prot Warriors. However, single target damage seemed lower unless the Devastator talent was taken, in which case you lose out on Indomitable, which is the 25% hit point and 25% increase to Ignore Pain Absorb talent, which is something that's pretty much too good to give up when it comes to progress rating. Despite these changes, and despite my my personal dislike, I think that Warriors are still going to be a relatively strong tank. It is a strong toolkit for smoothing damage through shield block uptime and well-placed Ignore Pains. Ignore Pain can also be used to negate large boss abilities. Warriors have long cooldowns in the form of Last Stand and Shield Wall, so we have to be thankful that as a base unit, Warrior is pretty strong. Warriors can offer good support in raids via intercepting the main tank when off-tanking for both rage and tank damage reduction, and the talent Inspiring Presence actually adds up to quite a nice addition to the healing on certain fights as well. So now guys, we're going to move up to tier 2, and starting in tier 2 we have the Monk. So looking at Monk, we have some good buffs here. We've got a new talent, Mystic Vitality. Stagger is now 40% more effective against magical attacks. This is going to provide monks with a better toolkit to handle large magic-based boss abilities. The damage done by Brewmaster abilities has also been increased by 9%. Again, this was drastically needed as it became more apparent at equal gear levels on life that Monk was falling behind DPS wise, which on progress can be a problem. As mentioned before guys, we need extremely high raid DPS when doing progress raids, and that includes tanks. Thirdly, Dampen Harm now reduces all damage you take by 20 to 50% for 10 seconds based on the size of the attack, with a 2-minute cooldown. This is also a cooldown that's been buffed. Monks are definitely fairly strong at the moment. Stagger is great for progress rating as it smooths the damage out so well. In terms of burst tanking or handling of large boss abilities, Monk could very well be king. With the new talent, Mystic Vitality, allowing monks to stagger more magic damage, I think there's definitely going to be a few situations in Nighthold where Monk comes in very handy. Monks favour situations where they tank in short bursts. A weakness is possibly the sustained tanking ability over long periods, where brew shortage leads to a higher damage over time. That aside, Monk is looking great, and the large damage increase just tops it off very nicely. And joining Monk in tier 2 guys, we have the Paladin. Protection Paladin has received no big buffs up and nerfs this patch. Protection Paladin remains the same as before. It stands strong while the other tanks just shift around it. Prior to this patch, Paladin hovered around the top 3 spots when it came to raid tanks, just behind Warrior and Druid. With this patch, it remains in the top 3. Paladin scaled very well with gear, and we are at a stage in the game now where it's possible to stack very high levels of haste, even with the secondary stats being reduced in the patch. High haste means high uptime on Shield of the Righteous, which reduces incoming damage by a huge margin. Strong mitigation with decent self-healing combined with strong cooldowns, raid utility and good DPS makes Paladin an excellent pick at the moment. And guys, that leaves us with the last tank, and finally at tier 1, surprise surprise, we have Druid once again. Druid was the undisputed strongest tank before this patch, and believe it or not, there hasn't been too many nerfs to the class. The main nerf revolves around decreasing the amount of rage that is generated by druids across their abilities. This was an attempt to try and make it harder to maintain multiple stacks of active mitigation. It's an okay nerf though, because rage generation on druid right now has indeed been very high. Secondly, we have an Iron Fur nerf, which changes it to an 80% increase to armor instead of 100%. In reality, this will translate into a small percentage increase in physical damage taken. Pulverize, on the other hand, has been buffed and will now be the go-to talent for raiding. The damage portion has been significantly increased, and it now reduces damage taken by 9%. This is actually a buff for druids. With these overall smallish nerfs, everything that made druids so strong to start with is still at large. They have smooth and consistent damage intake with a powerful and straightforward active mitigation system with no charges. They have the benefit of choices. They can reduce physical or spell damage or choose to heal. Combine this with a high HP pool, lots of cooldowns such as Bark Skin, multiple stacks of survival instincts, and a very strong artifact ability that provides a further cooldown, and you have a rock solid tank for progress raiding. They are in essence the perfect progress tank. Druids are going to remain top tanks in this patch. So that brings me on to the conclusion, guys. And I just want to say that, again, this is a personal preference video, so it is an opinion piece. You guys can agree or disagree. But let me just say that I think that the tank balance with 7.1.5 is actually really good. The gap between the tank classes is a lot smaller now. I think all tanks are going to be viable options for the existing and incoming raid content. So if you're already planning playing one that I haven't put at the top, then don't worry. This ranked list, as I said, was a personal preference going into Nighthold from a bleeding edge progress point of view. And so guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you did, then please subscribe to the channel and throw me a like. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks, and I'll see you guys on stream.